It's time for the Fourth and Fantasy podcast. Right here, right now. Let's go.
Hello once again, everyone, and welcome back to the Fourth and Fantasy podcast. We are now on lucky episode number 7, and it's pretty amazing to me to believe that as of next week, I've been doing this for 2 full months. And like I said, that is just beyond belief for anything that I thought, and I'm glad I still have the opportunity to do this, but the show must go on. So in today's episode, I actually had another chance to get another interview, this time coming from one of my good friends that I met at college. His name is Brayden. He is a huge football fan, has a ton of knowledge on players, what they've done in both their collegiate and professional careers, and a guy who is a real encyclopedia of the game. And if you have any questions related to the sport of football or players, stats, anything, wanting to know what some guys have done over the course of their careers, he is the guy to ask. But I'm not going to ramble on for too much longer here, and we're just going to go ahead and jump right into that phone call interview. I hope you guys enjoy it. There's a wealth of knowledge in it, and yeah, go ahead and give it a listen. But anyways, I'm here with my good friend Brayden Gross. Brayden, it's nice to have you on.
I'm glad to be here.
And I mean, today, as always, going to be talking fantasy football. But with that being said, Brayden, tell me kind of about your life history, I guess, surrounding football and playing fantasy.
Well, I was 2 years old when I made probably the worst decision of my life when I looked at the TV and said, "Go Blue Team." Now I'm a Giants fan. So I've basically lived in hell for the last decade. I started I played one season of fantasy as like a kid when my dad drafted my team. I got Peyton Manning the year he was the 5,500 yards, 55 touchdowns or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I won the league that year. So, and then I didn't play again for a little bit because, I had to retire with nothing but championships.
Right.
And then in middle school, I started playing again. From my 7th grade year to my sophomore year of high school, I was in a league and won every year. So I was 5 for 5.
Wow.
5 leagues, 5 championships. And then my junior year, I almost made a trade for Jamar Chase at midseason at the deadline. Trade didn't get done. And then I played Jamar Chase in the fantasy championship, and he dropped like 56 points.
I do remember that happening.
And then the next year, I played in the same league, and I got third. I won the third place game, and decided I was going to retire. So for my freshman year of college, I didn't do anything. Last year, I coached our mutual friend, Jake Maui.
Yeah.
I coached his fantasy team, which kind of brought the itch back to start playing. And this year, I'm in 4 leagues. So
That's how they get you.
Leagues.
That's how they get you.
Yep. I actually just beat Jake last week because of Brandon Aubrey and because the Commanders' defense had -4 points.
They did, and when I was going through my notes, that's definitely one of the things that stood out to me. But I always started off on a little positive note on here, and the first guy I have down who we both got to watch a lot of in college and last year being his rookie year in the NFL. Haven't got to see too much of him this year, but Brock Bowers had 43.3 points, 12 catches for 127 and 3 touchdowns. So, Brady, just tell me a little bit about what you thought about Brock Bowers' performance and kind of what you've seen from him. I mean, even through, his Georgia days up to now.
Well, he's the only college football player to win 2 Mackey Awards.
True.
Which is one of the most impressive things of all time. I live with UK fans, so I've seen – I'm an SEC fan too, so I've seen plenty of Brock Bowers. For him to kind of come off the heels of Kyle Pitts and all the hype he had and then just one-up everything that Pitts did was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the NFL. His rookie year, he breaks the rookie catches record only because Malik Neighbors was concussed. I'm going to put that out there.
Yeah, true.
Only because Malik Neighbors got a concussion and missed two games. But he had a decent start to the year. Missed 4 or 5 games with injury.
Yeah, I think 4 games.
Was this his first week back or was it last week?
I can tell you that here in probably about 2.4 seconds. Yeah, so this was his first game back since that would be September 28th, which was so it's been about a month and a week or so. And in that
Yeah.
game also, which is kind of funny, they lost that game by 1 point, and then this past week at home against Jacksonville, they lost by 1 point in overtime.
Yeah, that was kind of a heartbreaker. They got stuffed on the goal line for the 2-point.
Yeah.
Or no, it was bad. The pass was batted down. And then they traded Jacoby Myers. But I think first game back off of injury, he hadn't scored a touchdown all year. He goes out and scores 3. It's pretty impressive.
And I
He
think, oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, he looks to be in mid-season form despite missing those 5 games.
And I think another thing that's been really helpful, obviously, you know this because you know who I cheer for as far as college goes, but Chip Kelly is, one of those guys. I mean, obviously, on the college level, his offensive scheme worked, but really at the coming back to that NFL level, it was one of the things that people are like, well, we saw what he did last year and we know kind of his career history, but how's he going to be able to take on these new guys like Bowers and Genty that are really kind of players that are not so similar to guys he's had before? But I think finally, after Bowers came back, Chip might have realized, okay, this guy's pretty incredible. And I mean, he needs to be getting 10 plus targets, every week.
Yeah, it's also not hard to see that your passing attack has no help at all with him not on the field.
Yeah, and I know
And
Raiders fans have kind of had it out for for Geno Smith a little bit too this year.
I've had it out for Geno Smith since he got Eli Manning benched for 1 week.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, anyways, obviously you can't say enough about his performance, but also another guy that put up 3 touchdowns this past week was the Atlanta Falcons' Drake London, who had 38.8 of his own points, 9 catches for 118, and as I mentioned, a hat trick of touchdowns. So, Brayden, what can you say about Drake London?
I think he's one of the more underrated stars. He won a Blitnikoff Award in college. Wait, no, he didn't. That was Jordan Addison, wasn't it?
I think, yeah, that 2021 maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking of I get him and Addison's college careers mixed up just because they both went to USC. But London, he's always been one of the more underrated stars. I know you had him in fantasy last year. I remember that.
Yep.
He's always a guy who's a threat to score, a threat to have big games, but I don't think he necessarily has the quarterback to consistently give him those big games.
Yeah.
When they're on though.
That's kind of, I mean, you can talk about that with Drake London, but that's kind of just the Falcons' offense, at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
So
they're really kind of feast or famine.
yeah, I totally agree. But obviously that week or this past week working out for Drake London, and then you'll have, your other weeks where he might have 2 or 3 catches, but you have a guy like Bijan who can go off for 200 all-purpose yards and 2 or 3 scores of his own.
Yeah.
And then the final guy I had, and actually for my notes, I just put Caleb Williams bullies the Cincinnati Bengals.
He did do that.
Because that sums it up pretty well, so admittedly. And
Colston Loveland is untackleable.
yeah, Jordan Battle might struggle to tackle this pillow that's supporting my lower back in this chair I'm sitting in. But
He's still a better tackler than Deontay Banks.
oh, we could go down a rabbit hole talking about poor tackling, but I mean
Yeah, we
Caleb
could.
Williams, this sophomore player, a lot of people kind of had a question mark over him going into the year, and he might have had one a little bit on himself, but regardless, 38.7 points, 20 for 34, so not the greatest completion percentage necessarily, but he threw for 280 and 3 touchdowns and tacked on 53 rushing yards. So, what do you think you kind of saw for Caleb Williams this past? And also, actually, before I ask you about it, I just want to mention if you want your quarterback to kind of have that tune-up game, even if it is in the middle of the season, and a chance for them to turn it loose a little bit, then what better team to do it against than the Cincinnati Bengals?
Them are the Giants. Williams is a player who I've always liked. I followed him when he was in high school. I really wanted him to go to LSU out of high school. And then when he transferred initially, I knew he was going to go to USC, but there was still that thought in the back of my head, like, hey, he could come to LSU. But I'm happy he didn't because we got Jaden Daniels out of it.
True.
So, but I've always liked Williams. I've always thought he was one heck of a player. I didn't think him playing under Eberflus would have worked out for anybody because I don't think anybody has ever done well under Matt Eberflus.
Not necessarily, no.
But I thought the hiring of Ben Johnson and the drafting of Odunze last year and Luther Burden this year is huge for him. His receiving core is so good. If his line can consistently protect, he'll have enough time to get it to any one of those guys. And then with the tight end room of Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet, he's got every weapon at his disposal. At this point, if he fails, it's on him.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think on top of that, another thing that Ben Johnson kind of hammers home and that some of those skill guys do well, you'll see all the time, like one of those backs that I mean, Swift even does it, even with, how precious he is to that team. And guys like Loveland Komet, they block so well. So even, if the offensive line isn't doing the greatest job, you see those guys, if they're not branching out onto a route, then they can pick up, some late blitzes.
Yeah, I think the Bears' offense, once they really put everything together and figure it all out, is going to be pretty lethal.
Yeah, I agree with you. But actually, shifting over, staying on the topic of the Chicago Bears, but well, actually, before we even talk about anyone in a negative light, is there anyone else you want to add in for this positive chain we're on?
There's one more guy I would like to mention, and that would be Christian McCaffrey.
Oh yeah,
He went off for 34 points this past week. It helped that he was playing the second worst run defense in the entire NFL. But he showed off in the pass game, which I think is still the number 2 leading receiver, or maybe 3 in the league.
mm-hmm.
He at the running back position, by the way, he's on pace to be the second or his second ever 1,000 season, the third time it's ever been done, second time by a 49ers running back.
Peace.
If he's one of those guys who, if he could stay healthy, he's like perennially one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's a threat to score at any given moment. He's almost impossible to cover out of the backfield because no linebacker in the NFL has the ability to cover him.
Agreed.
And except for Fred Warner, and he's on his team.
True.
And then outside of that, I think he is starting to get in a rhythm. I think the 49ers are starting to get in a rhythm, even with all of their injuries and Mac Jones at quarterback, who I think honestly, if you look at all these quarterbacks who have had a career resurgence, they've gone to well, not all, I guess, but Mac Jones and Sam Darnold went to San Francisco and learned how to play football.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of Christian McCaffrey, I pulled it up. So he is 7th overall in the league right now in receiving yards. Now, This is a list of the top 50, and I'm going to give you a quick trivia question. Besides CMC, how many other running backs do you think are in the top 50 in receiving yards this season?
I want to say like two.
There's actually none. McCaffrey is the only running back in the top 50, and he's number 7.
That's impressive.
That is super impressive, as you mentioned, the 1,000 split season potentially on the horizon again. He's sitting at 626 as far as receiving goes this year so far, and he is sitting at 596 for rush. So he's actually has more receiving yards than rushing yards. But I mean, that's kind of what the West Coast offense does, and that's a way that they are able to install him in the playbook.
Oh yeah. And I'll give you a trivia question. Who was the first ever running back to have a thousand season?
First ever running back to have 1,000 season. Give me a time, maybe a decade or a 20-year span.
80s, 90s.
80s, 90s. First ever thousand season. I'm trying to think of what team, because I mean, you go back that far, there's really not a ton of guys who were catching the ball out of the backfield. Obviously, today the pass game is so crazy.
Well, you mentioned the West Coast offense, so I would probably go down that route.
Start with the West Coast offense. Okay, so that would eliminate probably the top two from the 80s, which would be like Walter Payton, Barry Sanders.
I will give you, it is not a Hall of Famer. He probably should be. I think he has 3 or 4 rings. Should be a Hall of Famer.
Not a Hall of Famer. That's also, I mean, I don't know if that's going to help me because I can't say I know too. I mean, I know some of these guys that are in, but not all. I'm going to say, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. And this guy might be in the Hall of Fame, honestly. But I'm going to think that, or my final guess, I should say, and this is probably totally wrong, and he's probably in the Hall of Fame, but I'm going to say Marcus Allen.
Marcus Allen is in the Hall of Fame, and it is not him. It is Roger Craig of the 49ers.
Wow. You did say that earlier, that it was 49ers player.
I did.
Yeah, I forgot you said that. Roger Craig, how about that? And a good piece of trivia right there. But yeah, CMC, still on that pace, obviously, and as I mentioned, actually has more receiving yards right now than rushing yards. And I'm sure that NFL and fantasy managers everywhere will kind of continue to monitor that. But moving on to maybe the negative side of things here, and as I mentioned before, speaking of Chicago Bears, they put up a lot of points, but one guy that didn't really help is Rome Odunze. He actually had 0 points, meaning he did have 0 catches for 0 yards. So what do you make of that? The fact that the Bears offense was able to explode in the way that they did, but Rome didn't have any catches.
I think it's very impressive, and I hate it because Rome's on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
But I won anyway without him. So I think it's very impressive that they are able to explode like that in the way that they did. Of course, they were playing the Bengals defense, which might be the worst defense in the history of the NFL.
True.
I told a friend of mine this past week, it is unfathomable in my mind that a bunch of professional football players can be that bad at defense.
It's amazing. It really is.
But I think that they have this ability to pop off the way that they did without Rome is something that not a lot of people are really reading into as much as they should, because they just proved that they could put up 47 points without a pretty good receiver getting the ball. Of course, Caleb Williams had more catches this week than Odunze. He had Caleb Williams had 2 catches this week.
That's
One for a
true.
touchdown.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that you can't continue to win without getting Rome involved. But I don't believe that it's going to be extremely detrimental to the team if you have a couple weeks where he doesn't get involved.
Yeah, and I think that might almost, be a compliment to the Bears, the fact that they put up that many points without him. And one of the things I saw, I believe, Monday morning that I thought was pretty funny, and it said Rome Odunze managers who took their Sunday afternoon nap and slept through that game would wake up, see the score, and think, "Oh, I'm sure Odunze did awesome," when he didn't have any points, which I thought was pretty
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, it's quite impressive.
But moving on to our next guy here, who is just on a team that's seeing a lot of struggles. Alvin Kamara put up point 0.7 points. He only had 6 carries for 14 yards and then just one single reception for 3 receiving yards. But I mean, this Saints team as a whole is kind of in a weird spot. Obviously, now you've sent Rattler to the bench and you're bringing in a rookie who a lot of people, I mean, quite frankly, were a little confused by with getting picked so high and New Orleans, taking the chance on him. So, what do you think the Saints maybe need to do to try to steady out their offense and create some scoring opportunities?
To be frank with you, I don't think they can.
Yeah.
I don't think they have a quarterback on roster who should be an NFL quarterback. Kamara's good, but they don't have the line to block for him.
Right.
They have Chris Olave, who many have deemed to be the concussion king.
Him and two are fighting for the crown.
And he's still not even wearing a Guardian cap. And their defense is trying their hardest to keep them in games, but they just can't.
I mean, their defense, like all things considered, obviously the record doesn't reflect it at all, but they're really not that bad. And they have a few
No, they're
veteran leaders who have kind of stepped up and are, the vocal part of, either that line or that second or the secondary for that team. And like I said, all in all, they're pretty decent.
yeah, but when you're on the field for 45 minutes a game, you're not gonna not give up points. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you and I saw it with Marshall's defense this past week at Coastal Carolina. Defense was always on the field. They played a good game. They still gave up 44 points because they were always on the field.
Yeah. That's just the fatigue. Like you said, it's just the fatigue over everything else. And when you're in a spot where you can't obviously establish any sort of run game, so you really can't run down the clock and get first downs and just move the chain steadily up the field. And without establishing a run game, then there really can't be much of a pass game.
Exactly. If you don't have that threat of, hey, we could run the ball at any given moment, the defense is going to know that you're passing, and they're just going to sag back and let you throw.
Yeah, and I think the Rams defense is very well put together, but you saw that coverage a lot from them, kind of dropping into those deeper zones and making it difficult for the Saints to really do anything. But like you said, I think Kamara is a great player, and I mean it is going to be difficult for them at this point in the year to do anything with him. And obviously now he's getting up in age a little bit, and especially for running backs who are getting beat up week in week out. But I mean, we'll just kind of have to sit around and wait and see what really happens with that team. But moving on, another running back who comes out of that same division, who at the beginning of the year was, probably a moderate pick on a lot of people's draft boards, a middle round guy who people felt relatively safe taking, and now is really kind of fallen into a running back two role is Chuba Hubbard, who only had 1.7 points, 5 carries for 17 yards and no reception. So,
Yeah,
Brayden, what?
he's lost his job.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I'm being biased because I have Rico Dowdle in 2 leagues, but I mean, he's really been nothing short of fantastic over these past 3 or 4 weeks. So, really, Brayden, what do you think that means for Chuba Hubbard?
I think he signed that big contract in the offseason to stay with the Panthers, but I think that they could have a mean 1-2 punch. And the Panthers are a team that not a lot of people's talking about that I think more should.
Yeah, for sure.
They're looking if it wasn't for the Colts, I'd say they'd be my surprise team of the year.
I mean, but like you said,
Um,
the Colts have been unbelievable in their own right.
I think that Chuba, he's a great back. Um, don't know much about him personality wise. I do know that he threatened to sit out the COVID year because of something Mike Gundy had said at Oklahoma State,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I didn't really agree with because I think that's just a diva mentality. But I've not heard much about him other than that. So I think he's got a decent head on his shoulders. I think he kind of controls his own destiny right now. I think he could attack this with a level head and like just every down matters, every game matters, or he could give up and just sulk in the running back 2 spot. Either way, if you've got that man fighting for his job back and Rico playing as well as he can, the Panthers' running game is going to be dangerous.
For sure, and as you mentioned, really surprised people. They're sitting at second in that division, the NFC South at 5-4. But before we move on from the Panthers, I also want to give a brief shout out to their defense, who has done surprisingly well. I shouldn't say super surprising, but have done extremely well. And they have guys, and one guy that sticks out to me is J.C. Horn, who or not obvious, I think is making a case for maybe a top 5 corner in the league. Honestly, I mean, he has 3 interceptions this season, and I think he's been great in coverage from the the analytics I've seen.
He has played amazing. I am very impressed by their defense in general. Um, it's slightly reminiscent of the Luke Kuechly days down there in Carolina.
Yeah, and I think obviously Panthers fans aren't going to complain about that. And J.C. Horn, I remember he was a top 10 pick. I want to say he was from South Carolina, I believe.
Yes.
And he was a top 10. I remember even back in college, he was nasty back there.
Well, his dad is Joe Horn,
True. Yeah.
so he's got football in his blood. So
That definitely, you can definitely tell he kind of has that instinct for it. But before we move on, I guess from any other bad performers, is there anyone else you want to give? I don't know. I guess whatever the opposite of a shout out is to.
DK Metcalf
Yeah.
put up a whopping 2.6 points.
So I mean, I didn't get to see a ton of the Pittsburgh game this past week. We were actually eating at Roosters and in Waverly, which was farther away from you, I guess. Not the not the Rooster close to you, but I mean, what really happened? Was it the Colts defense was just kind of zoning him off that well, or was he just not getting the target? Which also, another thing I've said about DK a few times this year, and throughout his career, he's never been one of those guys that gets like 12 to 15 catches a game. He always gets like around 5 or 6. And, even in the games he's having 100 yards, he gets like 5 catches.
He had 4 targets, 2 catches, and 6 yards. So I think if I had to guess, he just wasn't getting open.
Yeah. And I mean, as we mentioned, the Colts look a lot better this year. I think their fronts created a lot more pressure and I mean, obviously, I'm sure the Steelers are fine with the result because they still came away with a win. But
And 6 turnovers.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think as long as DK, which he does sort of have a history of not exactly being pleased when he doesn't get the ball or is getting locked up, I guess.
Yeah.
But hopefully he kind of is matured and will be able to stay level headed for a Steelers team that's done pretty well so far.
Who was it that he poked in the eye a couple weeks ago?
Oh my, I c- I can't. The one that
Was it Quay Walker?
it might have been, and
I think it was.
the example that always sticks out to me in the past few years was in Cincinnati 2 years ago when he picked up Cam Taylor Britt by the jersey with two hands and threw him on the ground when Seattle was getting back into the huddle for their next play.
Yeah, he did that. I mean, there's been videos of him kind of just wrestling defensive backs for fun.
Yeah,
He's a big baby.
he is a big baby indeed. I mean, he's probably 6'4", 6'5", 230. Not a
Yeah,
guy I want to mess with, but regardless, yeah, he's got
he's huge. It's roid rage. It's got to be.
the diva mentality a little bit, but I mean, as far as negatives, that's not too terrible this week. I mean, just a few guys who, even if they didn't do well, their teams were still able to come away with a win. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you really can't downplay their performance too much. But moving on to our last topic of the day, and the one that I have the most fun with, I think is the most important, is our X Factor Player of the Week. Now, last week, I picked your boy who did a lot of stuff good in his when he got the opportunity last year, and Tyrone Tracy Jr., who, with Scattaboo going down, I thought was going to have a huge week. And I even said last week on here that I thought the Giants were going to beat the 49ers, which obviously did not happen. And along with that, I didn't have the greatest pick. Tracy only having 5 carries for 18 yards and 3 receptions for 19 yards on top of that. But nevertheless, we look ahead. So, Brayden, what do you got for this week?
So I came in very prepared. I looked at every single metric pretty much to rank a team by. I have scoring offense, defense, pass offense, defense, and rush offense, defense, yardage wise. I've I've got a list of I have X factors for every game, but I'm just gonna kind of talk about my important ones. I
Okay.
think in the Atlanta and Indianapolis game, I think Indianapolis is gonna come away with a win. Atlanta has one of the best pass defenses in the entire league. But Michael Pittman Jr. is having a phenomenal year. And
Yeah.
I think with the threat of Jonathan Taylor, and I think the Colts are going to be looking to bounce back this week. I think Pittman's going to get very involved in that game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I agree.
Going to Vegas and Denver, I think J.K. Dobbins is your guy. The Raiders are allowing 109 rush yards a game, and Dobbins has been playing solid. He didn't have a great week last week, but I don't think really anybody on the Broncos did, yet they still came away with a win.
Yeah.
So I do think that Dobbins could be pretty solid there. My biggest one for the week is DeAndre Swift for the Chicago Bears, playing the second worst rush defense in the entire NFL. The Giants are allowing 150 rush yards per game on the dot, and the Bears' rush offense has been pretty solid. The Bears are rushing for a lot of yards. I lost it here. The Bears are rushing for 140 yards a game, and the Giants are giving up 150 yards a game. So I think DeAndre Swift will be a lock to have a good game this week.
So, yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the statistics right there, and man, talk about a little bit of a cakewalk these past 2 weeks against the or further running game of the Chicago Bears, having it a little
The
easy.
Played the worst two rush defenses in the entire NFL in back-to-back weeks.
Yes, I definitely I definitely like your guy there. So, with that being said, that's your main guy for this coming week, DeAndre Swift.
I would say so, but he's up there. He's definitely up there. I also would say look out for Quentin Johnston for the Chargers against the surprisingly weak Pittsburgh pass defense. They're coming off of a good game, and I think that it's going to kind of get to them. I think they're going to come in a little overconfident and give up a big passing game to the Chargers this week. Specifically Quentin Johnston.
And I think when you talk about the Chargers and Steelers game, the Chargers wide receiver room's average age is probably about 9 to 10 years younger than the Steelers secondary, just on average. If I were to guess.
They're pretty young.
And then meanwhile, on that on Pittsburgh's side of the ball, you have a lot of older guys who, maybe not so much this past, but like what it stuck out to me in that Bengals game, which obviously guarding that Bengals pass game when it's moving is difficult in and of itself. But Pittsburgh kind of got exposed that Thursday night in Cincinnati, and they seem to be maybe a little timid on that in that secondary ever since.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, you heard it here first. DeAndre Swift. You mentioned Michael Pittman. That they're playing. Do they play in Atlanta or is that
No, it's in Indianapolis.
in Indianapolis? I like it. Well, I mean, do you have any other final thoughts to add on here before we wrap up?
Not particularly. I think we've had a solid discussion. I think we've got some pretty good stuff out there today.
Yeah, I think you hammered it home, and for the people listening, kind of some insight of maybe who to go with for this upcoming week or who not to go with, or some red or green flags to just look out for these upcoming slate of NFL games. But with all that said, Brayden, I thank you so much for joining me. I'll go ahead and end the call here. And like I mentioned before, hopefully there were a few key takeaways in there that you were able to make for, not really only just this upcoming week in fantasy when trying to figure out, guys to start, guys to sit, who maybe you should pick up off the waiver wires or whatever the case may be, but also just learning about the history and the careers of some of these guys who we see playing in the NFL today and, see the success that they've been able to build and kind of the origin story behind that. But that is going to wrap up this episode, and I thank you all so much for listening if you made it to this point in the video. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and also share this video with a friend if you think that they are a non-ball knower and might need some knowledge dropped on them for this upcoming week of the NFL. So once again, my name is Riley Burnett, and I thank you so much for listening here on the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast.